Hello and welcome to Beyond the Noise, the podcast series from PRWeek UK. I'm Elizabeth Wiredu, a news reporter for PRWeek. Today I'm joined by three comms professionals in our industry, Kamiqua Lake, Ronke Lawal, and Michael Bartley. Thank you all for being here. So today we're going to have an honest and open conversation about diversity in the PR and comms industry ahead of UK Black History Month, which runs throughout October. We're going to be talking about everything from career progression and mentorships to real steps the industry needs to take to create a truly inclusive environment, specifically for Black comms professionals. To start, I'd love to hear from each of you. Thinking back to when you started in comms, how has the industry evolved? And on the flip side, what changes have been slower than you expect?
Who wants to start?
Michael?
I'm happy to. I mean, my career journey in PR is a little different to most. I didn't start my PR journey till I was 33 years old. So it's a second career for me. I had 11 years in asset management before I made the decision to come to PR and comms. So I think my journey, as I came as an older person, I was able, I believe, to add value a lot earlier and a lot quicker than most people would. So while it was challenging to be effectively a 33-year-old intern and making a long commute for a little bit of money, I was able to provide value to the agency that I first went to. And I think that was seen quite early. So this is 12 years ago. And looking at the industry from then to now, I've seen a massive influx in the number of Black professionals. And that will sound surprising because we still haven't got enough. But if you went back to 12 years ago, it was markedly different. I remember my first breakfast morning. It was like a PR introductory breakfast. We went to a specific location and it was all people that had 0 to 1 year's experience in PR and comms. I remember going to that room, I looked around and I was like, there is nobody that looks like me. Absolutely no one else that looks like me. Everyone felt like they were a clone of each other. It was very, very formulaic in terms of the people that were in that room. Now, that would have been incredibly challenging had I been a 21-year-old Michael Bartley walking into that room. I may well have turned and walked back out. However, being a 33-year-old Michael Bartley with a little bit more confidence in myself, I was able to stay there because I knew I was there for a reason. I knew I joined a new career for a reason. So I would say much has changed, but yet much has remained the same.
Cam, Ronke, what do you think? How has the industry changed since you first joined?
I'm happy to go. I think I studied PR and I've been in the PR industry for 20 years. So I feel like my whole adult life I've been in PR. I studied fashion PR, so I quickly realised fashion PR wasn't for me, although I still love clothes and fashion. I think how it's changed for me is that, yes, I was very much the only, particularly in fashion spaces, but I was lucky enough in that my first boss when I was interning at Exposure was Michelle Adjaman-Coley, who is a Black woman who now runs her own agency too. And I didn't actually realise when I look back now how lucky I was, because I had someone who was guiding me and kind of shaping my career in the early years without really realising it, who had a similar, not the same, but like a more similar background and experience to me. So I think that kind of helped me and shielded me in some ways, and I didn't really notice a lot of the challenges early on, albeit I always felt like quite an outsider. I also think, when I was doing my course at University of the Arts London, there was like 3 or 4 of us that were Black out of about 50. And the culture was just really different, not just from a race perspective, but from a class perspective. So quickly, I was aware that I was quite different. There wasn't that many of us, but I had quite a nuanced experience in that my first boss was a Black woman. I think now things have changed. I do think that is due in part to the Black Comms Network. Like when I go to an event, I normally know someone. But that for me is also part of the problem, is that I know a lot of the Black people in the industry, which kind of proves the point that there's not enough of us, because there's still a lot of work to do. Yeah, I think their spaces feel slightly better, but I think there's still a lot more work to do in terms of feeling like actually this is a kind of diverse space with lots of different types of people from all different backgrounds within it.
Last but not least.
Yeah. Following up from that, it's so interesting because my journey, so I took a kind of entrepreneurial journey. I started self-employment early 20s, but it's really interesting because as I'm hearing you both speak, I'm thinking to myself, the industry Like, where did I see myself? And I realized that because I was really hustling, I used to go to where my clients were. I wasn't focused on the industry. So, and even where my clients were, sometimes I'd be the minority. But I never really looked to building, in all honesty, when I really, really take the time to reflect, building relationships within the PR sector or industry, because when I even attempted to, everywhere I looked did not look like me. And if I spent too much time looking in those spaces, I probably wouldn't have carried on or tried to maintain my business. So I just went to wherever my clients were. So I'd go to business networking events, conferences. So I was just this lone ranger kind of person in my early to mid 20s who was just very much spurred on by this kind of East End Hackney Del Boy and Rodney energy, like I've got to go and make it. And then like, where if I needed to find real inspiration, I found real inspiration from like counterparts in the States, actually. If I'm being really, really honest, back then I'd follow PR professionals and consultants in America because there seemed to be more Black men and women doing PR in America than there were at the time when I started in the UK. So, and has it changed? Obviously, it's absolutely. And now, thank goodness for spaces like the UK Black Comms Network. And, you know, some of the work that the professional organisations and institutions are doing, like the CIPR and the PRCA, some of that, but I have to give credit where it's due to CAM and the UK Black Comms Network. That is kind of where I found my home. So that's where things have started to reflect a change, I think.
So let's get right into a common issue. What misconceptions about the professional experience for Black comms professionals would you like to set the record straight on?
I think one of them is that oftentimes for Black talent, the ethnicity pay gap is more nuanced in that oftentimes middle managers can be paid really well to stay at a junior level. And so rather than offer a title, which is the gateway to a more senior position and more pay, you can be a very well paid account manager, consultant. So it's a slightly more nuanced story because there's something around our industry grappling with who can be in those director positions and will they reflect the client base and can they hold their own in those spaces? Will they represent the agency in the right way? That I think is an unspoken conversation that happens, which means Black talent can often get to account director even, or account manager, account director, but struggle to get into those director positions. Now, it doesn't mean that no one is. There are definitely senior leaders in our industry who have gotten there, but they've had a very difficult or challenging path or got years more experience to get into those positions.
Michael, what are your thoughts? What would you like to set the record straight on?
It's very, very interesting because this is something that I've only heard externally. But usually people feel that when a Black person is working within comms, they're usually typecast to a specific area of comms. They don't usually think that they're going to be a senior leader within, like, say, a business and technology team. Or my background is more like kind of cybersecurity. So they would never think that they're going to see a leader within cybersecurity or in fintech or in those kind of areas that are going to be a Black professional. They would more likely or assume that they're going to see them from within a consumer background or working in film and working in digital. And that's not to say that those areas aren't fantastic, and we have great digital guys in my own agency, so I don't want to cast any shade on them because they're doing a fantastic job. But I think from an external perspective, it should be opened up that we have got the capability to do much more. We have got the capability to be senior leaders right across the full gambit. We can be in PA, we can be in corporate, we can be in marketing and creative services, we can be in business and technology, we can be in consumer, we can do anything we want to. So that's something I'd like to set the record straight. Not that anyone's really hitting me over the head with that, but I have heard that a couple of times from people like, oh, so what, you're in consumer? Absolutely not.
For me, it's even more pronounced as a business owner that people think we only do, and there's nothing wrong with doing like Black stories or issues affecting Black communities, which we absolutely can do, happy to do. But before I set up my own business, I was doing everything from public affairs, corporate affairs, reputation management, right through to consumer comms. And suddenly when you start a business, and because I'm a Black woman starting a business, and I've actually spoken to some clients around it, and the penny sort of dropped that they kind of had me in a box.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about making sure that any of the work that I do mirrors and is in synergy with Black audiences. So I'm really passionate about that. But it's really interesting because when I get some of my major clients, you've nailed it when you said when the penny drops. It's like, I'll say something and it's like, it clicks. It's like, oh yeah. Like it almost feels like we're only there for a kind of temporary kind of a moment. But then we exist beyond a moment, like our communities and our, exist beyond a moment. And sometimes, well, more than sometimes, clients, particularly clients that are speaking to mainstream general population. I hate to use the word mainstream because hello, we are part of the mainstream, but general population, it is so, they just make it, it's almost like even just having this conversation around Black History Month, like it should be an ongoing conversation as opposed to just one-off during Black History Month. You should make sure we're always part of the communications process and the leadership process and how we're communicating with the general population, but then that's not always the case. I don't always get it, and I think it's unfortunate. But I guess we're going to get into that, the nitty-gritty of why that is.
Have any of you seen the recent Sanex advert controversy? So Sanex, which is a shower gel brand, recently showed the skin of a Black person and it was cracked and it was banned for reinforcing negative stereotypes.
I was going to ask, what was the message that they were
what's
trying
the
to communicate with
context?
the advert? If the context is that you're using something else as opposed to Sanex, and that is as a result, you are having
you're ashy, right? Because my immediate thing was, that makes sense because we don't tend to want to be ashy.
No, it was the storytelling that was poor. So I've seen the ads, and I think if we're going to give light to ads that are not great, we should give light to ads that are great, like the Vaseline ad that's doing around the moment, which is great. But I think what they've done is they've done diversity by numbers. So they're like, we want to include Black skin, we want to include white skin. And they've not really thought about the story they're trying to tell, because if they really looked at the story they were trying to tell, the Black skin wouldn't morph into perfect white skin. So that's almost like the story, and you will remember it, Ronke, now. It's coming back to you.
Yeah, that's bad. Oh, gosh.
So what? So just give that further context, Cam. So what?
Yeah, so basically it's an ad where it starts off where it's kind of a Black model that they've used and the skin is really cracked and ashy, and then they have a shower with Sanex shower gel and it morphs into like white skin that's problem free. I don't think that's what they meant to do, but I think where they went wrong in their statement is that they were trying to do it but didn't do it. And I think if anyone's watching an ad and can see that you're trying, you've missed the mark. Do it if you know how to do it. And I think it was in the storytelling that it was a problem, because if you looked at the story of that, it would have been very clear that would have been offensive to lots of audiences. But if you look at this from I need to represent all skin tones and don't think about that within the context of the story, that's when the challenges happen.
What do you think the industry can do to prevent these type of failings? Do you think there's a particular problem around diversity and inclusion in creative roles?
It is about having cultural fluency in marketing teams, someone that can look at this and be like, actually, does that make sense? And if you don't have it in your team, hire people that do understand this.
Absolutely. That's why we need holistic teams. That's why you need people from all different demographics to be in teams, because then you don't have these kind of blind spots, especially for marketing campaigns like that. I mean, that must have gone through how many different layers before that got to people's screens. I'm amazed that even happened. So that further context does help, but that's a huge faux pas on their part.
On the flip, the crisis management, right? A crisis comms piece. It always feels like that's missing, particularly when we go through the statements. It's like, and it goes back to that seniority, like allow the people who understand to write the messaging, the apologies, whatever it is, to handle the crisis. So trust in us. And there's sometimes I feel like there's a lack of, not only lack of trust, but there's an infantilization of senior Black leaders, particularly in the comm space, to take ownership and say, okay, look, we're going to let you handle this and handle it in a way that you feel is appropriate. And because the way Cam just explained and described it, Cam would know even how to address it and issue a statement that actually nails it and it takes ownership and accountability. But quite very often, so those statements still fall short. And then what ends up happening is the population that you're trying to reach, the audiences that you're trying to reach, develop a level of mistrust. And then they start developing all these misconceptions and misunderstandings about your brand. because even the way you're handling a crisis is not well done. So
there are a couple of things off the back of that, though. I think you have to have that kind of skill set and those kind of people within your team to then afford them the opportunity to write the crisis comms element of the program. And if you haven't got that, then you're already struggling. I think the second thing is that I'm a big believer in failing forward. So I wouldn't want these brands to then think, right, we've got this completely wrong. Let's just stop even trying to address this market, because the one time that we gave it an opportunity, we failed. As a consequence of that, we've had a huge backlash. That's not to say what they did wasn't ridiculous, because clearly from what I'm hearing now, it absolutely was. But I always try to encourage business leaders who make these mistakes. Continue. Listen, I've made how many mistakes, as all of us probably on this call, to get to the stage where we're at. And if we didn't make those mistakes and didn't take those chances and didn't take those risks, then nothing would change. So my two key points for people to take away are those ones that, okay, get maybe more black people on your team and make sure it goes through that kind of demographic review. And then obviously don't be afraid to fail. I don't want to see people being afraid to fail. You're going to be critiqued. This is the business that we're in. But if you're afraid to fail, then we're just going to continue to see the same things happen again and again and again.
I think that it has to go beyond intent. Once you say, okay, I want this advert, this comms, this campaign to reach as many people as possible, including black communities, Asian communities, whoever it is you're trying to make sure feels included, then that's when you seek the counsel. You look around the room and you think, have I got the right expertise in this room to do this well? And if you haven't, what do you need to do it well? So like Michael's saying, no, everybody's got blind spots. Everyone's got things that they're better at than others. We've all got biases that we're walking around with. It's about marketeers and PR people recognizing that and then partnering at the right moment. And oftentimes the partnering or the conversation happens at a casting level. So they might be like, actually, let's get a few different models, rather than what story am I trying to tell right from the beginning? Because if they were trying to tell a story that made lots of different people from different backgrounds feel more included, they wouldn't end up there. But if you look at that as in this is the story, and then now I want to make it diverse, that's when the mistakes happen.
Beyond just bringing in diverse talent, what do you see as the biggest challenges in retaining and promoting Black professionals within the industry?
The best way to describe it is, right, we had our BCN summit on the weekend, or last weekend, a couple of weekends ago, and it was really straight talking. It's all the same advice that you always hear, or you might be given in various different contexts, but in terms that everybody could understand. Like, there is a lot of jargon, and absolutely it's on individuals to understand and learn the industry, but particularly when you're coming in, it can feel really alienating, especially if it's not a culture that you've grown up with. It's not in proximity to the culture you understand at home or the culture you understand outside of work. It can be very hard to understand not just what your job is, what's expected of you, and what people are actually asking of you. And what was refreshing, I think, about the summit was that everything was in layman's terms, like just in ways that everybody talks. And I think that our industry still very much does have that kind of class issue, but also just that cultural issue overall makes it quite difficult oftentimes for Black talent to find their place, but then have the right conversations to be able to succeed.
Yeah, I agree. I think the culture piece is really, really important. I think I'm really happy and keen to support current mentoring schemes, right? I think they're really important. I think there's so much value added with mentoring schemes, but I think that some of the aspects of the industry use mentoring almost as a fix-all, a quick fix, or they don't necessarily partner with organisations that already have pre-existing mentoring schemes and support them and fund them in a way that's going to lead to next level sponsorship, elevation in their organisations. So I kind of feel like that also needs to be addressed, the kind of excessive mentoring, or mentoring as a fix-all solution to every single problem within the industry. I would rather either support the ones that exist and fund them, and then create models, sustainable models that will allow talent to thrive and grow and just keep going, than continuing to just mentor and offer that as a solution to, that's my thing.
I think the mentorship and the sponsorship aspect is hugely important. And if you don't have the right mentors or advocates within your own organisation, then they need to come from further afield, the likes of the people that are on this call right now having this conversation. We have to take a certain amount of responsibility to and I know, Cam, you do more than you should, offer up our time to these young people to help guide them and help them navigate what is a very, very difficult industry. And again, like my own career journey is still somewhat nuanced, like Cam alluded to herself, where I was championed and sponsored and supported and pushed. But it wasn't just from Black people, I was pushed by everyone. And now a big part of this, I've found from the conversations I've had now, sometimes it's luck. Sometimes you just manage to go to the right agency, right, at the right time, where somebody there will just speak to you straight. And they'll say, look, you need to do X, Y, and Z. If you do X, Y, and Z, I promise you, you have a career here and I will promote you at every juncture. I was always told that there are two key things that you need to have. And I spoke to the young Black people at the summit Cam was talking about. These are two key things that you have no matter what industry you're in, no matter what organization you're in, and no matter who your direct line manager is, they will all appreciate and value this. If you have client following and you have people following, those are two key things. If the clients, you provide enough value to a client that if you were to leave that account or you to leave that agency, they would think about following you. I guarantee you that anyone who's in a leadership position at that agency is going to do whatever they can and fall over themselves to support you and make you go where you need to go. And the second one is if you have people following. If people within the agency and organization that you work with value you enough that if you were to leave an account or leave an agency, they would follow you to another agency. That's something else, because finding good people is hard work and is expensive. And no agency wants to go through a consistent recruitment process on the off chance that the person they get might be good when you've already got somebody who is good. So I always say to people, add as much value as you can. And this is going to be me being slightly old school, and I'm really big on visibility. Because people don't go off faith, they go off sight. And in most agencies you're at, people will value if they see you and see you doing well and see you there and see you overcommitting. There's a good chance you're going to go a long way. That's not to say that there aren't challenges, because some line managers just aren't good. If you can kind of get a crux of it from what I've just said, then I think it stands you in good stead. And if we offer our time to support, because a lot of it is, it's almost like counselling. I remember sometimes being on the train, I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I making this long journey to go and be an intern at this agency? You're barely paying me. And then I had good people around me who said, like, just don't look at this short term, like, keep going. And now when we go out, I want to buy us the drinks. But it worked. it worked out, right? So, yeah.
The only thing I wanted to add to that is sometimes, because it's tricky and like the broader society, not that you can have a chip on your shoulder, but it can feel like everything's against you in lots of different ways. And so sometimes you've got to work out how true that is, how not true. Is it just this place isn't for you? Like, what's really going on? And I think clarity is the biggest part of that, like really understanding what you want from the industry and what you want from this particular role, because sometimes you need to be left alone, sometimes you need support, there's different things you're going to need at different points depending on, particularly if you're trying to stretch upwards. But a lot of that comes from clarity of understanding who you are and what you want to bring. And then once you get really clear on that, which tends to happen when you're a few more years into your career, you can then make better choices around, is this place for you or not, or what you might need to go through to get to where you're trying to get to.
I was just wondering, if you were all asked to be mentors tomorrow, what's one bit of advice you would give someone you were mentoring?
The person that you're reporting into, more often than not, they either want an easy life or they want to look good themselves, similar to what you would do if you were working for a client. So therefore, you would think, how can I add value to this person who directly impacts my progression at this agency? How do they like to work? Is there anywhere in which I can support them? Almost look at them as if they are your own little mini boss outside of the work you have to do, and find a way in which you can communicate with them that would make them an advocate for you if you weren't in that room. What you should be doing every time you work with them, every time you provide a piece of work, every time you do anything with them, is think about the fact that you're not in rooms that they are in, and what do you want them to be saying to people? So it's all like personal brand stuff, right? So you just want them to be saying positive things about you. And that's probably one of the key things that I would say to a mentee.
Cam, Ronke, what advice would you give to a mentee looking to be promoted in comms?
I would say find community. I think it's really important to find community. So where possible, if you can afford to join an association, a network, finding that community will really, really help, especially when the days are long and you're tired and you feel like giving up. You can at least have a community around you that can prop you up and offer you the guidance and counsel that you need to keep going. I think community is really important.
I agree with both of those. And since I've heard Michael say that, that's the one key thing. I think it is about working out what role you're playing in the person that is line managing you's work life and what it is they're looking for from you, because everybody wants it. So much is beyond the job description. So it is one thing to understand your job description. Do you understand your job description? When you go for a promotion, do you understand what it is? One of the best pieces of advice I've had in terms of just the job itself was to traffic light your job description, understand what you're doing. You know, red is you're not quite doing yet, haven't had an opportunity. Green, I'm there, is one of the best pieces of advice. But then what do you need to do beyond the job description? How much do you understand the culture of your agency and what is valued? Is it proactivity? Is it going the extra mile? Is it creativity? What are the kind of unspoken things? And if you don't know, seek that out in terms of, you know, leaders within the agency to really understand what is it that what keeps everybody ticking over? What are they looking for in you? Is it speaking up? Is it being really active on your LinkedIn, for example? Is it about creative ideas? Because once you understand what makes your agency tick and you work out whether then you're that person and that's for you, you'll be able to plot a kind of route to senior leadership if that's what you're looking to do.
It's interesting you all kind of mention your line manager. So PRWeek's recently done a study that found that while Black comms professionals feel supported by their managers, their satisfaction about career growth actually lags behind other groups. I was just wondering, why do you think there's a disconnect between managers and actual career progression?
So many reasons. I mean, Ronke, I know you talk quite a lot of like pet to threat. I think that some of the challenges in our industry is that I think sometimes it can be that people want people to be good but not better than them. There's very small windows for promotion. There's loads of levels as well, which some agencies is really defined what the difference is between an account manager and a senior account manager is, for example. Others, it's less defined and you're not quite sure what you need to do. So there's something around, if somebody's line managing you and they're a level or half a level above you, what does that mean for them if you get promoted? And I think these are some of the things we just don't talk about, but go on quite silently. And I think that's for everyone, not just Black talent. So there's something around who's managing you. What are they exposed to the senior leadership team? Are they even around the leadership team table? So I've had managers before where I've been in, mid-level, but my line manager wasn't around the leadership table, so wasn't in those discussions around promotion. And so then a lot of my progress was dependent on that. So again, it's all about really understanding where you're at. Every agency has their star players, the people that seem to fly through. What's your proximity to them? How well do you work with them? Are they your kind of person? Is it the kind of culture you want to be? So much of this is really, it's more than just going to work and ticking a box in our industry. Because it's about people, and different people are looking for different things. So it's about really understanding who your line manager is, what do they value, and are they really invested in your progression?
And also thinking about, I think all of that was really, really good. And thinking about it from a broader perspective, how much time are we given for this career journey to transpire? Who are we mapping it against? Is the way in which we're mapping it, is it realistic? So, for example, if there's somebody else at my level and they were going through a certain cadence and I felt I was as good as them, that's the cadence I'd expect to follow. If that's not happening, then you need clarity on why it's not happening. Sometimes you have to ask the difficult questions, right? Sometimes in life it's going to be hard. And if life's going to be hard, then you just got to do it hard. You can't shy away from the fact that it's not working as you want it to work. So if that was happening to me, I'd be very, very clear in terms of, okay, what do you need to see from me by what date for me to then make that next move? I wouldn't, because I think often what we do, and I've been very guilty of this myself, we just go off in a half, and this ain't working for me, they don't value me, they don't see me, they don't understand what I bring to the table. But that conversation maybe not necessarily be having to the people that can impact your career. And I did this in my first career in asset management. I was there for like 11 years. I probably made 3 promotions in 11 years. All because I was internalizing the challenges that I was having. I wasn't speaking to anybody who could actually impact it in a positive way. I then went into BR, and my second job, I went from an A to a deputy managing director in 5.5 years. How did that happen? Maybe I was a little bit older, maybe I was a little braver, maybe I was willing to have the difficult conversation to say, what exactly do you need from me? She was very clear on what she needed from me. I provided it and I got the promotions. If I was providing the value and I wasn't getting the promotions, then maybe this isn't the agency for me. And I'm always open to the fact that that might be the case. And if it's not, thank you very much for everything you've done for me. I've provided a great service for you, and I'll be on my way until I find a way that I can navigate my way through another agency. But it's about having difficult conversations and being adult enough to know that you may not hear what you want to hear. Maybe you're going to hear back, look, the value that you provide is an X, but we don't really value X. It was great that you were pitching. I love the fact that you were getting those opportunities. But now it's about new business. This next level is about new business. How much new business have you been generating? How many pitches have you been on that have been successful? Oh, right, you're matching me against the criteria I wasn't even aware. I wouldn't have known unless I asked the question. So I think it could be a number of things, but we also have to be very, very clear in terms of what the agency is looking for or the company is looking for from you to elicit those promotions.
And that's it. I think it's really important to almost treat your career like a business, or like kind of like be the CEO of your career journey and your career path, right? So have a boardroom, you've got your advisors, you've got your mentors, you've got your sponsors. You've got to figure it out and identify. And you've got to realize, and I know it can be hard for people because there is that emotional attachment. People can get really emotionally attached in certain spaces. If their line manager, for example, just does not like them, it might not like them for race-based reasons, or just not like them personality-wise. Like, because there's a whole variety of reasons. But then you've got to figure out, okay, what do you want to get out of this job? And is it also healthy for you to even be in an environment where not only it's not just about not being liked, but how you're treated as well. Because sometimes you're going to be in a space where you're not liked. You are respected, you're rated, and so you can still elevate in that space. But if you are recognizing yourself, if you're recognizing that actually, when you take a step back and you do your assessments, you're giving it your all, you're still not valued, you're still not appreciated, you're still not being promoted, you're still not being paid what you're supposed to be paid, then you've got to treat your job, your role, as almost like I said, like a business. You've got to be strategic and move on. But it also requires building those relationships, not only internally, but externally as well. And be willing to network and show up outside of the organization you're in. Because as Cam rightly said, there might be people inside of the organization who are your saboteurs. They're the people who are trying to keep you, they're your blockers. They're the people who are trying to keep you at a certain position, because if you do go above them, they'll start to see you as a threat to their own progress. So keep that in mind.
So I think we've all kind of faced hurdles throughout our careers. Could you each share a significant professional challenge you faced and what strategies you implemented to overcome them? Has there been a time where you've had to really fight for yourself, where you need to get your foot in the door and it seems like no one's listening?
I think the biggest challenge I had was getting the first opportunity. So coming from a financial career path to trying to get into PR, it was far more difficult than I ever believed it would be. I was really confident that, like, since I got an interview, I would get the job. But the problem wasn't that. The problem was getting the interview in the first place. Like, no one would even let you through the door. They were thinking, why am I letting this 33-year-old man come in at an A level, probably for some of the reasons you guys have talked to. This guy's going to come in and either he's going to leave within 3 months or he's going to take my job. So absolutely not this guy is. I think the biggest challenge was getting my foot through the door in the first instance. But this is one thing I talk to people about. You have to be resolute. You have to be strong, man. You have to be determined, and you have to be walking with purpose. Because when you go in any industry, you have to be robust to the challenges that are going to come your way. And so I just continued applying and kept going, and I wasn't going to take a backward step, and I wasn't going to take a no, and I wasn't going to go back to asset management, which I hated, when I knew that it's going to sound religious, but I knew God was pushing me towards something else. And so I just continued to do it. I continued to do applications. I continued to say thank you when I got the no's, because I knew that as soon as I got the opportunities to go in a room and talk to them, I knew that I'd get the job, as did happen. The challenge there was, then I was there for 9 months, not really getting paid. At the end of 9 months, I got offered a salary, which I wasn't particularly happy with. But then I was true to my own word, because then I moved on. I was like, thank you very much for everything you've taught me. And I did learn a lot. And I can now take this to another organisation who's going to probably appreciate it a little bit more. So I'd say the biggest challenge was getting my foot through the door in the first place. But thankfully, and in some ways it done me a favour, because it made me even more determined once I was in, that I was going to stay in. I was going to do all of the things that I talk to people now. I was going to be visible. I was going to be the first one in, and I was the first one in, so much so that I got my own key. And I was, most of the time, going to be the last one out. And I was going to rinse and repeat until I got the opportunities I felt like I deserved. And then you fast forward 10 years later, I'm in a fantastic agency who values me, who give me the opportunity to do things like this and champion things like this, and are open to the fact that maybe they don't know everything, and maybe this is best for me to kind of have this conversation with you guys today. Maybe it's best for me to go and mentor the young people coming through. Maybe it's best for me to suggest some of the ideas that we should be doing as an agency to progress Black people in the agency. I'm very, very open about that and not afraid to fail. So all of that 6 months of challenges in the first instance, you go forward 10 years and it was all worthwhile. Who knows what will be in the next 10?
It does.
The granddaddy of PR.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I learned when I was in-house about the value of network. And that's like obviously before I started BCN or anything like that, or started Coldr. But I was in a role where there were two of us kind of in very similar levels. So I was a senior manager and this person was like a head of. And this person was going off for mat leave. And as soon as I was going to be acting head of, the salary dropped by like 10K. And obviously the line manager, the person that was going on mat leave was my line manager and was really open. And so I knew, what the salary was. And I was like devastated that the role had suddenly dropped in value once I was going to be in that role. I literally went in the toilet and burst into tears, and no one understood why I burst into tears, but I was just like, I just couldn't understand how this was okay and it was open and this was fine and everybody thought it was okay. And so I went to my line manager about it and they couldn't do much, and I went to my line manager's boss, who I also had a relationship with, and they could do a bit more. So it was really important I had different people that I could talk to. Once I got over my emotion, actually I then started thinking about who do I need to say this to and how do I need to deliver this in a way that they're going to understand that this isn't the right way. And also, I don't, you need to give me a better reason than we're now decided that head of PR, we don't want to pay as much for that role. So it really taught me without me really realizing that it's really important to have those different kind of leaders who value you in different ways that you can go to and have a conversation around that can really support you. And then I think it's been a similar case with starting Coldr, in that it really was my network that propelled the first clients. So I can't stress it enough, and I stress it to young people all the time. Like, even when you were talking, Michael, like even the people that interview you, the industry is quite small really, and everything comes back around. So you have to really make sure you're thinking about that footprint that you're leaving and those relationships that you're building, even if it's just a hello, or if it's somebody you've worked with, or someone who might advocate for you when you need it. I think that's how I've gotten through some of the biggest challenges in my career.
Yeah, wow. So, because I've had a slightly different experience, but I was going to say I've been through the trenches. I don't even know how I've survived. So we've asked that question. I'm like, what? My back is still like 12 rounds in the ring. I'm joking. I'm up. No, I'm going to keep it positive. I'll keep it light. Let me get back on track. No, in all honesty, I think despite all the challenges, and it's so funny because there's been instances where it just feels like people are just try and undermine, diminish, devalue me. They don't take me seriously. And then I'll be somewhere and somebody will be retelling their own journey. So when we talk about white founders or white independent consultants or whatever, there's a thing I've noticed, particularly in our industry, where certain people are given so much more grace and space to try new things, be bold, be vibrant, be themselves and dynamic. And I've noticed that there's a diminished value. And so when you use the term value even, there's a diminishing of value when someone like myself is out there and bold and trying new things. And, I'm not saying I'm perfect, I've made mistakes, but I am out there and I'm quite unique. I try to be as confident as possible. But even that can chip away, because sometimes I think, well, hang on a minute, how come that person can say whatever the hell they want? And the minute I do, it becomes there's a weird energy that surrounds the things that the activities that I do, or the way I promote my business or promote myself or whatever. So that can be a challenge, even just confidence-wise, right? But overall, it's why I go back to saying network is really important. The community that I have is really important. And even when I feel as if I've been undermined or diminished, disrespected, which has happened on numerous occasions, I do my best to go back to self and purpose and maintain good quality relationships with people. I don't burn. It takes a lot before I burn a bridge, so I don't burn bridges, even when I smell a rat. Like, I don't burn bridges because I know what this industry is like, and this industry is small. But I do. Once I smell that rat, I will always remember the smell of the rat. So I'm going off on a very Nigerian tangent here, but I am making sense in my head. But I do make sure that I don't burn bridges, and I think that's how I've been able to overcome a lot of the challenges I have. Just so I can still walk into any space or room with my dignity held high and still be able to like walk in and be like, okay, I am who I am, despite people trying to knock me back. So yeah, there's been a lot of challenges, but I've survived them.
This has been an amazing discussion, and we're about to come to the end of this podcast. But the last thing I wanted to ask is, what's a tangible, non-performative action that agencies and in-house teams can take to move beyond surface level diversity and inclusion?
Can I just say, money is a tangible. So they should be supporting networks like the UK Black Comms Network, initiatives. They should be, it's even things like, I know this is a bit of an idea. It's things like making sure that if you're hosting an award ceremony, making sure that you're really looking at who's the guest, like look at who's on the guest list, being like just tangible, who is in that room beyond the usual players, right? And just being mindful of who's going to be in that room. What do you need to do to tangibly support organizations that are either they're Black led, or if you need to improve your own diversity, look at tapping into networks like UK Black Comms or any other network that exists. So, but money for me is a big one.
You know what? There's no one size fits all. It's really like, have you got Black talent in your industry, in your agency? That is like the first question. And if you have, where are they? Are they all in the junior? Did they progress to senior? So you've got to first, it does start with understanding. And I guess, I mean, I hate using data, overusing data, but you do, a lot of, I think this conversation goes to, or people that listen to this might be agencies that don't even have any Black talent. There are still agencies that don't have any Black talent within them, or departments that don't have any Black talent within them. So you've got to start there and be like, actually, why is this? I think it's a no-brainer that we need diverse teams in PR to make, it just makes the work better. So you've really got to look at your starting point. And then for me, there is so much out there. Like, you can't say you can't see us anymore. We're louder than ever. There are networks, there are spaces, depending on what's important to you, to find Black talent. And then you've got to look, and then for us, like, we're putting out resources, the research we do, reports we do. Are microaggressions an issue? Is it about culture? Is it about pay and promotion? You know, so you've just got to do the work.
In true PR style, I'm going to reframe your question to one I actually want to answer, which is a bit easier for me. The key thing is, as I discussed earlier, please don't be afraid to fail. I think so many agencies are so afraid to touch the taboo of how do I speak to the Black or the minority ethnic people within my agency to figure out what drives them, what do they want, how do I speak to them, how do I communicate to them, how do I make them feel seen, how do I empower them, how do I sponsor them. Please don't be afraid to fail. That's key. And then I do a lot of media training, so again, it'd be remiss of me not to have 3 closing points. Okay. For the people that are listening, that are within the industry, know that progress is possible. That's the most important thing. Don't ever feel like you're sat there alone, feeling like you cannot progress in this industry, because you can. And the career paths of the 3 people here on this podcast show that you can. As the key thing that was raised a couple of times on here is that no one succeeds alone. So you have to find your sponsors, find your community, find your network. That's critical. It's really important. But within that network, don't just have yes men, don't just have cheerleaders, don't just have backup dancers. Get yourself someone that's like a chief operating officer whose job is to be horrible, whose job is to say, you need to do this and you need to do it by this time or you're not going to succeed. And then I think the final thing is to the industry as a whole is that, and it's going to sound cliche, but a better industry benefits everyone, right? An industry that's inclusive will then retain the best talent. And there's always going to be barriers. We understand that. We're not looking for things to change overnight, and we're going to be the ones that knock through these barriers. And we appreciate that they're going to be there. But as I said at the beginning, if life is hard, then do it hard. Do it hard. Don't give up. Be robust. And we're always here if you need support.
Well, that's all we have time for this week. Thank you, Cam, Ronke, and Michael, for this incredibly important and insightful discussion. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in this week. Bye-bye.